Hello everyone, welcome back to the next topic, our firepower threat defense features and components. So the first thing we're getting into is some of the higher level features that are available, again with visibility both into the application and the session flowing through the appliances. Your flexible deployment options, whether it could be dedicating an appliance just to one option or a subset of options, or even integrating multiple features into one appliance. And then also software convergence, not only with the management of our platforms from a centralized perspective, but even integration with other third-party vendors all through APIs or application to program interfaces. As far as some of the features, please note again, these are still starting off very, very high level. I promise you, I know what's coming. We're going to have individual topics on all of these and more. So once again, visibility into, of course, IP, the URL, and any kinds of DNS protection going out to domains that are known to be malicious sources. Even our ability to go even deeper into the file type and what is the file attempting to do. Folks, wait until we get into the actual topic, but we have the ability also to take a file and sandbox it for in the cloud analysis to see what's happening inside of that file. Also, via Snort, the Open App ID defining applications by an app itself, and then being able to more quickly understand what that application is trying to do and make sure that the application operation is within the defined boundaries. And then as we mentioned earlier, threat grid integration, literally dynamically sandboxing our activity, our sessions, our packets for a deeper analysis into that packet. Now, as we mentioned earlier about the flexible deployment options, whether it's going to be integrating multiple different functions, that is firewalling and IPSing into one appliance, or doing what I think of as a specialization of services, having this only be a firewall, this appliance only be a firewall, and that appliance only perform IPS functions. Or once again, our multi-domain management. Give me a moment, we have an actual slide dedicated to this, but the simple way I think of multi-domain management is multi-tenancy. And that's very, very common inside of data centers these days. But as I mentioned, give us a moment, hit the I believe Isaac button. We're going to be going over that really, really soon. We have the ability to decrypt sessions, SSL and TLS encrypted sessions as they're passing through the Firepower appliance. And then also the ability to do a captive portal, an initial user portal for authenticating our users, especially in a guest net, so we can control their access to the network and their activity on the network or their activity through the security appliance. As far as some of the more, in my opinion, foundational and common features, it's going to be our access control features. So once again, as we mentioned in our last topic, the application stateful awareness to understand not only the protocol and port, because today there are so many applications that are using TCP 80, TCP 443, but also going even deeper into what the application is trying to do. Folks, as well as incredibly detailed accounting. We have an entire topic coming up later just on session accounting, connection accounting, and the details of what the Firepower appliance maintains on sessions going through its interfaces. And then as we mentioned earlier, live inline authentication of the user to control their initial connection, whether they are an employee within our organization or even a user that is, once again, doing more of a guest kind of an access. Now, as far as the threat defense automation, in my opinion, the key word here is going to be automation. The automatic analysis of the traffic going through the interfaces, at bare minimum warning you, notifying you of malicious activity, all the way to using the information that's automatically gathered for other rules to block that traffic. Our ability to do reporting and correlation, folks, if you ask me, the key word here is correlation. As you might remember from the last topic that you may have just watched, the ability to identify, hey, this is actually a flow. Even though this is one address and this is a different address, this is the outside public address, and then we natted it to the inside server address. So these two different addresses are actually for the same flow. So again, the Firepower's appliance ability to correlate these events to identify this as an actual attack, not two separate incidences. And you might remember from my introduction, I'm a big fan of application to programming interfaces. So through APIs, the ability to work with other products, even from other vendors. And then last but not least, getting into our various operations with recommendations from Cisco that could either be viewed on the website, public website, or even various updates, everything from operating system updates to live rule updates based upon new information that's been learned to be able to better protect future flows, future connections. Now let's pause for a moment because that was incredibly high level. I promise you we have even more information coming up in the topics to follow. But let's pause for a moment and think about, fine, these are amazing appliances with an amazing feature set, but how do we manage them? Why do I want to understand, why do I want to go into, again, FMC or Firepower Management Center? It's because it's our centralized management of all of our different firepower threat defense appliances. So the basics is, this is an appliance. I'm going to keep it real simple. It's an appliance, literally an appliance. Whether it is a physical appliance or a virtual appliance, that's going to be something we talk about a little bit later. For example, the physical versus virtual might be because of the interface, the environment you're trying to protect. Maybe again, it's going to be more of a perimeter, inside, outside DMZ. Maybe it's going to be a virtualized data center. Maybe it's also going to be a choice you make based upon the number of managed devices. It is again a licensed approach for the features and management of your environment, and it's all going to be policy-based management. So what we literally end up doing, if I can go to the next slide real quick, is we literally have our managed devices, so the actual firepower appliances, the ASAs with firepower threat defense loaded on them. Folks, whether they are physical appliances or virtual appliances, maybe even some of the legacy appliances, the 7000 and 8000 series, or again, our next gen IPS that is a virtual appliance, so the next gen IPS V. And then also ASA with just firepower services. Now give me some time, we're going to go over these in more detail in other lessons, other topics, but please understand the difference between ASA with firepower threat defense and just ASA with firepower services, because again, there is a difference in the generation of the appliance and the features that are supported. But here's what I think is most important. Number one, we're going to be going over that in its own topic coming up soon. But number two, far more important, they all still fall under the idea of managed devices. So if we go back over here to the communication, in my opinion, what started this subject, started this conversation, is we have our Firepower Management Center, FMC, whether it's again going to be a physical appliance as we talked about a moment ago, or whether it's going to be a virtual appliance, a virtual machine. Virtual appliance is simply a pre-built virtual machine for you. And then again, we have a tie-in to the actual managed device. And we're able to push down configurations, push down policies, at a bare minimum, even grab event information, inventory, and statistics from the devices that are being managed by the Firepower Management Center. As far as the connectivity, I'm going to keep this real simple. It's any standard browser. It's again happening over TCP 443. So I happen to be a Chrome fan, but Chrome, Firefox, IE. You also have the ability to restrict from a management perspective which administrators are able to access which areas of the Firepower Management Center, kind of a delegation of roles. Now, please understand, everything we've been talking about with the Firepower Management Center is really fallen into the centralized category. You can do also an on-box, so a browser-based, a command line-based management of the appliance itself, kind of an old school approach. Or again, you can do Firepower Management Center, centralized appliance, whether it's physical or virtual. Or what you can also do, especially in larger, global, Fortune 100 environments, is you can do what is referred to as Cisco's Defense Orchestrator for, again, multinational, global distribution management of your firepower appliances. So remember, we're going to be focusing on this quite a bit in our topics and our recordings. So let's go over the actual login screen. One more time, from any standard browser, you HTTPS into the IP address of the Firepower Management Center appliance and give it a default login, and you're able to go in and create another account or even just change the login credentials for the default admin account. Understand that this interface, this GUI, is very, very tab-based with primary and secondary and even sometimes even tertiary tabs. So please note we have overview, analysis, policies, devices, objects, AMP, and again the options go on. Also understand, please, that based upon the tab you're on, that's going to be highlighted red, and you'll even be able to see other tabs, as I mentioned a moment ago, sub-tabs underneath that. And folks, let me pause for a moment. I'm not going to bore you to death with the basics of a GUI because thankfully GUIs are GUIs are GUIs. So something that we've all grown to become familiar with, this down arrow means that when I click on it, I'm able to expand into more options. So we see here the domain awareness, the concept of the domain awareness takes us back a few slides to simply multi-tenancy. I want to pause for a moment. You might remember from the introduction video of my area of focus, my background. I do a lot of work these days inside of the data center, whether it's physical data center infrastructure or even virtualized data center. And folks, I want to be very, very clear. Your tenants or multi-tenancy is incredibly, incredibly important. Got to make sure I'm abbreviating tenant properly there. So again, multiple logical divisions, multiple logical overlays, multiple logical environments on top of one physical environment. Folks, these tenants could be based upon regulations, compliances. They could be based upon departments. They could simply be based upon a production and a lab environment. Well, here inside the Firepower Management Center, our multi-tenancy is actually put into effect with multiple different domains. So again, Firepower Management Center is domain aware. You are able to do up to 50 subdomains. I got to tell you, in all the work I've done with this product line, this portfolio, I've never even come into a scenario where I was upset that I couldn't have 51 domains, so never even a limit. And again, when you first deploy and log in, you're logging into a single domain. And your administrators, so let me back up just for one moment. I've never liked the word user here. I think of administrators. Our administrators are going to be the ones that are actually doing this. But they're able to switch from one domain of configuration to another domain. And what's really nice, guys, is when you have created multiple domains, you're able to see who you're logged in as and the domain they are currently logged into. Now, as far as the level definitions, remember again, this is all from the Firepower Management Center. You have the ability to go in and group devices as this device is going to be for this particular domain, and then also the events and the configurations are going to be associated with that device and is part of this particular domain. And as we said earlier, you might have administrators that perhaps are only for production, or an administrator that, especially if you're in a scenario where you're doing infrastructure as a service, maybe you have an administrator that is only responsible for this one set of customers, this one domain. So again, when the administrator logs in, they are restricted to be able to access resources only in a particular domain. And what's really, really nice, if you're very focused in security in your environment, this is great for yet another acronym. Our industry is so full of so many different acronyms, but what's referred to as Managed Security Services Providers, or MSSPs. So a moment ago, when I said infrastructure as a service, another example again could be the Managed Security Services Providers, where you're literally giving out security appliances, a security infrastructure as a product. That is your company's revenue producer. But remember, please, we were talking about the concept of multiple different levels inside of a domain. Keep in mind that if we only have a single level defined in a domain, that is referred to as the global domain level. And one more time, no multi-tenancy. All devices, events, configurations, and policies are associated under that global domain level. It's a default configuration. But what we're able to do is go in and define under or within inside of the Firepower Management Center, again, subdomains, or what's referred to as child domains, under the global or the parent domain. And then remember, again, we can have ourselves administrators that are able to access the global domain and everything below it, or even administrators that are only able to access subdomains, or as the slide here is referring to, customer-specific domains. And let me pause just for one moment. Keep in mind the reason why they're throwing out the word customer here is you might be, especially with your MSSP, in an environment where, as we just mentioned, you're providing infrastructure and security devices to your customer as a product to them. They pay you, you provide the product to them. So again, the customers are able to log into their own domains and have access only to the resources for which they are paying. Again, we can go even deeper. Our individual child domain, so the second level domain, having the ability to create even a tertiary set of domains underneath that. And what's really, really nice, especially from a policy perspective, this is where these names are coming from, is we can have a policy configured inside of the Firepower Management Center that is only going to be, let's say, for my perimeter firewalls or my perimeter IPSs, versus again for my server farm and DMZ. So one of the beautiful things about these multi-domain environments is, number one, they allow us to support a multi-tenant, multi-tenancy organization, even the organizations that are able to provide security services out to their customers, but especially when we consider how Firepower Management Center is able to push policies based upon a domain, we're able to have even our hierarchy of management, our hierarchy of our policies. So just as we have a hierarchy of the physical device grouping, we're able to have a hierarchy of our policies that we end up pushing to those physical devices. Backing up from the theory and now getting into the actual GUI, the operation. So remember again, this is our Firepower Management Center, accessible by any standard browser over HTTPS. Folks, we're going to go under Devices, Device Management, and simply click on Add Domain. Give the domain, of course, a name, and we can even see subdomains that are created, child domains that are created under global. Even global knows that there are 2 subdomains, and we can see information on different appliances and appliance version that is underneath that particular domain. You're also able to add different devices to the domain once that domain is created. As far as some of the considerations, I think this is all good information, is you can move devices as needed between your domains. And folks, you can also move the data, maybe the events that have been gathered by that device, the network map, from one domain to another. Just in case you end up reorging, changing your infrastructure, or even adding on new domains at a later time. So thank you again for listening to this topic, the recording on this topic, which is going to be our features and functions, if you ask me, the beginnings of our features and functions of the Firepower Threat Defense, especially getting into the terms of a management center, the Firepower Management Center, the appliance, whether it be physical or virtual, and then the managed devices the FMC connects to and takes management control over, whether it again be an ASA with threat defense or a Firepower threat defense appliance. Thank you for listening.